The studio was electric long before the cameras rolled. Lights glared down from the rafters, flooding the stage in that perfect, unforgiving glow television demands. A low hum filled the air, the shuffle of cue cards, the squeak of sneakers. Across polished floors, the faint murmur of an audience waiting for their moment to erupt. Then came the countdown. Crisp and final. Chris Evans stepped into the light, the crowd breaking into a roar that almost drowned out the band. He smiled, the kind of smile America knew well, Captain America's smile, steady and reassuring. But behind it, something else flickered, an almost imperceptible tightening around the eyes. Jimmy Kimmel sat opposite, relaxed in his chair, a master of the easy banter that could glide over awkward truths. The opening minutes were effortless, playful jabs, and practiced rhythms. Then Jimmy pivoted, tossing a light question about Hollywood and politics, the sort that usually drew a safe, witty remark. Chris leaned forward, voice calm but deliberate. "Sometimes I think the entertainment industry underestimates the cost of staying silent," he said. Jimmy chuckled, as if to brush it off. "Well, we tried to keep it fun here." Chris didn't retreat. Fun is good, but fun shouldn't mean avoiding the truth. The audience's applause faltered into silence. Jimmy's smile thinned a fraction too tight. His eyes flicked toward the producers offstage, and something unspoken passed between them. The tension was sharp now, visible, undeniable. A stagehand appeared just beyond the curtain, gesturing subtly. Jimmy shifted in his seat. "All right," he said, tone clipped. "I think we'll leave it there." Chris blinked. "Is that it?" "Yeah," Jimmy said, almost under his breath. "We're done here. This wasn't scripted." And in that split second, everyone in the room, and millions more watching, felt it. The stakes had changed. The applause, hesitant and fractured, bled into the background as Chris stepped off the stage. The corridor behind the set was cooler, quieter, but no less tense. He kept walking, each step echoing in the narrow space. The pulse of the band's outrow still vibrating faintly through the walls. In living rooms across the country, viewers replayed the exchange in real time. On Twitter, the clip was already gaining traction. Captions like, "Chris Evans goes off on Kimmel," and "This wasn't in the script," spreading like wildfire. For years, Chris had been Hollywood's golden boy, the actor who carried himself with humility, spoke about kindness, and avoided the darker currents of industry politics. But those who followed him closely knew he had another side, fiercely principled, unwilling to compromise when it came to issues that mattered. He'd spoken out about voter rights, climate change, and the corrosive effects of misinformation. Always measured, always in control. Back in the green room, a young producer hovered by the door. "We didn't see that coming," she murmured, almost to herself. Chris glanced up. "What did you expect? That I'd just nod and smile?" She hesitated. "It's late night. People expect easy laughs, not this." He shook his head. "Maybe that's the problem." Meanwhile, in the control room, Jimmy leaned against the counter, headphones hanging around his neck. "We'll cut around it for the West Coast feed," he told an editor, though his voice carried an edge that wasn't quite annoyance, something closer to unease, because it wasn't just a segment that had gone off script. It was an image, a reputation, maybe even a friendship, splintering under the weight of one unfiltered moment. And now it had already left the building, taking on a life of its own. The digital storm was already forming before Chris had even left the lot. News blogs clipped the exchange, editing it into 20-second bursts that stripped away context but magnified the spark. Each repost came with a caption that twisted the narrative. Some called it courage, others labeled it arrogance. The comment sections became battlegrounds. Inside a black SUV, idling at the curb, Chris sat in the back seat, scrolling through the first waves of reaction. His phone buzzed relentlessly, the screen a flood of notifications. He read a text from his publicist. "We need to talk." Now, another from an old friend in the industry. "You know they're going to spin this." Miles away, Jimmy was in his office, jacket draped over the back of his chair. A senior producer leaned against the desk. "We had sponsors watching tonight," she said carefully. Jimmy exhaled through his nose. "It's my show. I keep it on track. If a guest takes a hard left, I have to shut it down." She hesitated. "Sure, but the way it happened, it's going to read like you kicked him off for telling the truth." Jimmy glanced at her, sharp. "That's not what happened." Out in the city, the conversation was no longer theirs to control. The clip became a prism, refracting ideology, celebrity culture, and media ethics all at once. People weren't just asking what happened. They were asking why. And beneath the noise, a deeper question was beginning to surface. In a media landscape built for comfort, what happens when someone refuses to play along? The answer was still forming, and it promised to be louder than either man could contain behind the camera's eye. The stakes weren't just professional. They were deeply personal. Chris Evans carried more than just the weight of his career. He carried convictions etched into his very identity. The years spent championing causes, veteran support, voting rights, climate action were not mere talking points, but lived truths. Each cause was a thread in the fabric of who he was. And tonight's confrontation wasn't an act of rebellion, but a declaration of integrity. Backstage, the air was thick with unspoken tension. A makeup artist glanced nervously at Chris as he wiped away a bead of sweat. "Are you okay?" She whispered. He nodded, voice low but firm. "I have to be." Jimmy Kimmel, meanwhile, wrestled with a different kind of burden. To the audience, he was the polished host, the genial ringmaster keeping chaos at bay. But in the quiet corners of the studio, he was a man caught between loyalty and liability. His job was to entertain, to balance sharp wit with broad appeal, and the cost of allowing a guest to disrupt that equilibrium was suddenly crystal clear. In a private moment, Jimmy's voice cracked slightly as he confided in a longtime confidant. "I never wanted to be the bad guy. But sometimes you have to draw a line." The line, though, was blurred by history and friendship. Chris and Jimmy's paths had crossed countless times before shared jokes, mutual respect, a complicated camaraderie forged in the relentless glare of fame. Yet tonight, that camaraderie was fractured, the rift widening with every passing second. Their personal stakes were tangled in the public's gaze. Two men caught in a battle that transcended ratings or reputation. It was a struggle for authenticity, for control, and for what it truly meant to speak your truth in a world built on curated smiles. Voices began to emerge from the shadows behind the camera, those who witnessed the fracture but had no script to follow. The executive producer's office became a crucible of shock and speculation. She leaned back, fingers tapping rhythmically on her desk as she recalled the moment it all unraveled. "We were expecting the usual banter," she said quietly, eyes distant. But Chris... he wasn't just pushing boundaries. He shattered them. A writer who had been scribbling notes for the show's next segment nodded in agreement. This wasn't improv. This was a reckoning. I could see it in his eyes. He wasn't there to entertain. He was there to speak. In the editing bay, a technician replayed the footage, the tension so thick it felt almost tactile. "The energy shifted," he said. "One second we had a smooth conversation. The next it was a collision. Behind the scenes, whispers turned into murmurs, murmurs into urgent phone calls. Legal advisors were summoned, sponsors demanded briefings, and the social media sphere exploded with fragments of the confrontation. Clips trended with hashtags like Evans Unfiltered and Late Night Truth, igniting debates that spanned politics, media ethics, And celebrity responsibility. Each perspective added a layer to the story, not just a man being asked to leave a show, but a cultural moment exposing the fault lines between entertainment and activism. As the network grappled with damage control, the personal stakes escalated, entangling everyone in a web of public scrutiny and private turmoil. And through it all, the question lingered. When does speaking truth become too dangerous for the stage? Quiet before the storm was deceptive. Behind the polished veneer of studio walls, decisions were being made with far-reaching consequences. Network executives convened in sleek conference rooms, their voices low but urgent. Chris's stance is admirable, one senior advisor admitted, but the risk to our sponsors is real. An attorney leaned forward, voice firm. We need to consider the contractual implications. If this escalates, it could jeopardize future bookings and the show's reputation. Across town, Chris sat with his team, the weight of the moment pressing down. His publicist's calm tone contrasted with the tension in the room. You're facing serious backlash, she warned. Social media is polarizing fast. We need a strategy. Chris's response was measured but resolute. I didn't come here to play it safe. If that costs me the seat, then so be it. Back at the studio, Jimmy paced the hallway, torn between his role as host and the personal connection he shared with Chris. A producer approached cautiously. We can try to smooth this over, maybe a private conversation? Jimmy shook his head, voice tight. It's past that point. We have to protect the show. The decision was final. Chris Evans would no longer be part of Jimmy Kimmel's program. The network prepared statements, legal teams drafted press releases, and the media braced for the fallout. But beneath the polished announcements and public relations maneuvers, a deeper tension simmered, one about truth, loyalty, and the high cost of speaking out when the spotlight is both a blessing and a burden. The studio lights burned bright, illuminating a stage that had become a battleground. Chris Evans sat rigid, the weight of the looming verdict pressing on him. The audience's chatter hummed with anticipation, oblivious to the storm swelling just beneath the surface. Jimmy Kimmel approached, his usual easy smile replaced by something colder, more resolute. Chris, he said, voice steady but edged. With finality, we need to wrap this up. Chris's eyes narrowed, searching for the meaning beneath the words. Wrap it up? Is that code for? Jimmy didn't answer. Instead, a stagehand stepped forward, whispering urgently in Jimmy's ear. The tension snapped like a wire. I'm sorry, but we have to ask you to leave, Jimmy said, the words falling heavy in the charged silence. The audience gasped, cameras capturing every flicker of disbelief and anger. Chris stood slowly, voice calm but fierce. I didn't come here to be silenced. The band struck an awkward chord, the moment hanging raw and unresolved. Chris walked off the stage, the studio's roar, now a chaotic mix of shock and speculation. Backstage, the air was thick with unspoken questions. Producers exchanged glances, aware that the night had shifted irreversibly. For millions watching live and online, this wasn't just television. It was a fracture in the carefully constructed narrative of entertainment. In that instant, the collision of truth and spectacle was undeniable. And somewhere between the glare of the spotlight and the shadows backstage, the cost of speaking out had become painfully clear. The moment Chris Evans was asked offstage sent shockwaves far beyond the studio's walls. Social media erupted instantly, hashtags blazing across platforms, dividing fans, critics, and casual viewers alike. Twitter timelines flooded with clips and commentary, each post a fresh spark in the growing inferno. Did you see what just happened on Kimmel? One tweet read, Evans was silenced for speaking truth. Another countered, this is a late-night show, not a political rally. Someone needed to keep the peace. News outlets scrambled to keep pace. Overnight, analysis panels dissected every second of the confrontation, speculating on the motives behind the fallout. Talk shows debated freedom of expression versus professional decorum. Op-eds questioned whether late-night TV was still a place for genuine discourse or just safe entertainment. Chris's own statement, short, poignant, and unfiltered, was shared thousands of times. "I honored my voice yesterday," he wrote. "If that cost me the seat, let my voice be seat enough." Meanwhile, Jimmy Kimmel faced the storm from the other side, issuing a measured response. "Our goal has always been to entertain and inform," he said, "and sometimes that means difficult decisions." But beneath the polished words, insiders sensed a more complicated truth: regret, frustration, and the fragile balance between control and chaos. The digital court of public opinion had convened, and there was no easy verdict. The incident was no longer just about a single moment on a stage. It had become a cultural touchstone, exposing tensions between authenticity and spectacle, truth and performance. Days passed, but the echoes of that night reverberated louder than ever. Chris Evans, no longer bound by the confines of a studio set, embraced the unexpected platform that had been thrust upon him. His social media presence surged, not as a silenced guest, but as a voice amplified by conviction. He posted a message that struck a chord. "I honored my voice yesterday. If that cost me the seat, then let my voice be seat enough." The words were simple, yet powerful, a poetic declaration of integrity that resonated with many beyond Hollywood's gilded circles. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, Jimmy Kimmel grappled with the fallout. His public statements remained carefully crafted, but those close to him noticed a quiet struggle, a man weighing the cost of control against the value of truth. "I wanted to protect the show," he confided in a rare private moment. "But maybe I lost something more." The divide between them wasn't just professional. It was emblematic of a larger cultural clash. Chris's choice to speak unapologetically echoed in conversations from living rooms to legislative halls, challenging the boundaries of what public figures could say. Jimmy's decision to uphold the show's boundaries underscored the pressures media personalities faced to maintain order in a fractured landscape. In this complex dance, poetic justice didn't come as a clear victory or defeat. Instead, it unfolded as a reckoning, a reminder that speaking truth in a world of spectacle carries both risk and power. For Chris Evans and Jimmy Kimmel alike, the night's events would leave an indelible mark, shaping their legacies in unexpected ways. In the quiet aftermath, the cultural reverberations settled into a new reality. Late-night television, once a sanctuary of controlled chaos and scripted smiles, found itself shaken to its core. The public craving for authenticity, raw, unfiltered, and unapologetic, was louder than ever. Chris Evans stood, not on a stage bathed in studio lights, but amid the echo of countless voices who found resonance in his courage. His decision to speak out, to risk everything for truth, transformed him from a familiar face into a symbol of integrity in an age of performative safety. Jimmy Kimmel, too, found himself at a crossroads. Behind the polished veneer of the host's chair, he grappled with the cost of preserving the show's facade versus the price of silencing a friend. Their fractured relationship was no longer just a personal rift, but a mirror, reflecting the tension between spectacle and substance in modern media. In a final whispered exchange after the dust had settled, Chris said quietly, "This was bigger than a show." Jimmy's reply was softer than before, laden with the weight of understanding. Maybe that's what it needed to be. The spotlight faded, but the reckoning endured. No clear victors emerged, only the hard truth that in a world built on curated images, the courage to speak one's truth can fracture reputations, challenge power, and spark change. This was not a triumph, nor a defeat. It was a reckoning with the cost of authenticity and the price we pay when the young spotlight demands both silence and spectacle. The dust hadn't quite settled when the ripples from Zion that night began to reshape conversations far beyond the studio. Walls, late-night television, a genre built on scripted comfort and familiar faces, suddenly found itself at a crossroads. Audiences were no longer satisfied with rehearsed charm. They wanted real voices, real stakes, and real consequences. Chris Evans emerged as more than an actor. He became a symbol for a restless generation demanding honesty from their public figures. His refusal to stay silent wasn't just a personal stand. It was a challenge to an entire industry hesitant to rock the boat. His name trended alongside broader movements questioning the boundaries of free speech, media responsibility, and the role of celebrity in political discourse. Jimmy Kimmel, navigating the fallout with practiced diplomacy, confronted a new reality. The delicate dance of balancing entertainment and authenticity had been forever altered. Behind closed doors, conversations turned to what the future of late night might look like, whether the old rules still applied or if a new era of boldness was dawning. In the quiet moments, both men grappled with the personal cost of that night. Friendships strained, reputations tested, and careers weighed down by the unyielding gaze of public judgment. But in this fractured landscape, one truth endured. The collision between spectacle and sincerity was inevitable, and the price of speaking out, no matter the cost, had rewritten the rules. As the lights dimmed on that chapter, the story remained unfinished, a powerful reminder that in the arena of public discourse, every voice carries weight, every silence tells a story, and every moment has the potential to change everything. The studio, once a battleground, had quieted, but its echoes lingered, reverberating through the corridors of media, culture, and public consciousness. The confrontation between Chris Evans and Jimmy Kimmel was no longer just a headline. It had become a moment emblematic of a broader reckoning. In an age dominated by carefully curated narratives, their clash underscored a fundamental tension. Struggle between control and chaos, performance and truth, comfort and confrontation. Audiences had glimpsed the raw, unvarnished reality beneath the glitz, and it changed everything. Chris's courage to speak, even at the cost of exclusion, reshaped expectations for celebrities and media alike. Jimmy's difficult decision highlighted the fragile balance media must maintain to survive in a fractured landscape. Neither man emerged unscathed, but both left a mark, an indelible reminder that authenticity demands sacrifice. As cameras dimmed and audiences moved on, the story continued in conversations over dinner tables, in late-night debates, in quiet moments of reflection. The battle between spectacle and sincerity was far from over, and in that tension lay the heart of the matter, the power of voice, the cost of silence, and the enduring hope that truth, no matter how difficult, will find its place in the spotlight. The curtain fell, but the reckoning endured, an unfinished story, still being written by every voice brave enough to speak. The aftermath stretched beyond headlines and sound bites, settling into the quiet spaces where change begins, not with fanfare, but with reflection. For Chris Evans, the confrontation became a defining moment, one that transcended his career and entered the realm of cultural significance. He found himself receiving messages not just from fans, but from strangers, touched by his willingness to risk everything for truth. Activists, journalists, everyday people wrestling with their own silence reached out, inspired to speak up in their own lives. Jimmy Kimmel, too, felt the weight of the moment, wrestling with what had been lost and what might be rebuilt. Behind the scenes, conversations sparked about the future of media, a new era where authenticity could no longer be sacrificed for comfort, and where the cost of control might be too high. The clash was no longer about one night or one show. It was about a shift in society's expectations, an awakening to the power of voice and the limits of silence. The cultural landscape had been altered, and everyone watching knew the story was far from overdone in that ongoing narrative. Both men remained players, their fates intertwined in a drama much larger than themselves, one that would continue to unfold in the years ahead, shaping how truth and spectacle coexist in an uncertain world. The reverberations from that fateful night continued to ripple through the cultural fabric, inspiring not only heated debate, but also introspection. What had begun as a clash between two individuals on a late-night stage became a mirror, reflecting society's deepening struggle with truth and representation. Media scholars dissected the event, calling it a watershed moment where entertainment met activism head-on, forcing the industry to reconsider its role as gatekeeper or platform. Across campuses, young voices rallied, emboldened by Chris Evans's stand, demanding spaces where authenticity could thrive without fear of censorship or retribution. Meanwhile, the entertainment industry faced an uneasy reckoning. Behind closed doors, executives weighed the cost of maintaining the status quo against the rising tide of audiences craving honesty. Late-night shows began experimenting with bolder content, blurring lines between spectacle and sincerity in unprecedented ways. Chris and Jimmy's story became a case study, a cautionary tale, and a beacon of possibility. It reminded everyone that in an era dominated by curated images and controlled narratives, the power of a single, unfiltered voice could ignite change, fracture norms, and reshape legacies. The spotlight had shifted. And as society grappled with this new reality, one truth was clear: the fight for authentic expression was far from over. It was a movement, a moment, and a message that echoed beyond the stage, resonating in every corner where courage dared to speak. Years from that unforgettable night, the conversation Chris Evans and Jimmy Kimmel ignited continues to influence the world of media and beyond. The episode became a defining moment, not just in their careers, but in the evolving relationship between celebrity, truth, and society. It stands as a reminder that authenticity is a double-edged sword. It can inspire movements, break barriers, and reshape culture, but it also demands courage and invites consequence. For those who watch from the sidelines, it is a call to question the narratives fed to them, and to seek voices willing to risk everything for honesty. Chris Evans's choice reverberated through boardrooms and living rooms alike, challenging institutions to adapt or falter. Jimmy Kimmel's response underscored the tightrope media walks, balancing entertainment, responsibility, and control in a rapidly shifting landscape. This is more than a story about a late-night show. It is a testament to the power of voice. In the age of spectacle, a narrative still unfolding. As new voices rise and the boundaries between performance and reality blur, one truth remains steadfast: the courage to speak is the catalyst for change, and the reckoning it brings is inevitable. The curtain may have fallen on that night's drama, but its legacy endures, etched in the cultural consciousness and in the hearts of those who dare to speak truth in a world built on carefully crafted illusions.